It's a common cliche in a lot of sports where they'll say, absolutely anything can happen, you just don't know what's around the corner. But I'd wager that nothing is quite as impactful, as intense, as shocking as the one-punch knockout. Some of them have been the very first punch thrown in a fight, kind of humiliatingly, whereas some are in the very last round, those championship rounds, and a guy well behind on points claws it all back in spectacular fashion. Taking into consideration the aesthetics of it, how well it was set up and delivered, and contrasting that against the historical worth of it, how much did it mean? Here are my top 3 one-punch knockouts of all time. At number 3, for the heavyweight championship of the world, back in 1951, the rubber match between champion Ezzard Charles and 37-year-old Jersey Joe Walcott. These guys had previously fought twice. Of course, with it being a rubber match, both of them won by Charles. He won the first fight pretty comfortably on points. The second fight he won again and managed to floor Walcott. Going into this one, Walcott was as much of a 8-1, even a 9-1 underdog. People forget that. This was a massive upset. And the reason I think people forget that statistic, as well as him going on to become the oldest ever, till that point, heavyweight champion ever at 37, is because of how good the knockout was. It's round 7. Walcott kind of frustratingly bangs his gloves together in his unique kind of shuffling way. They go into a corner clinch. He marches up to the centre of the ring almost with a swagger. And it's as good as a shot you'll ever see picked. He goes in with a lead kind of hooker cut where it's coming at a 45-degree angle. Arguably more of an uppercut. But to lead from that kind of shot where you can't get that much leverage, he sees that Charles is slightly ducking. Boom, first shot he throws, it's amazingly delivered. I'd use the word exquisite for that. An amazingly timed shot, and Ezzard Charles, the guy who was the massive favourite, crumbles to the floor, attempts to get up and falls over again like an eardrum is burst or something. His equilibrium is gone. One of the nicest looking shots you'll ever see. At number 2, again for the heavyweight championship of the world, going back way back this time, all the way to 1897, Bob Fitzsimmons against champion James J. Corbett. Now these guys didn't like each other, different kind of characters. What was really unique about it though is that the winner, Fitzsimmons, used to be a middleweight, one of the most devastating punchers there's ever been in all of boxing. Had an unusual build, very broad on the shoulders, very narrow waist, and so he was a huge middleweight. He was able to go up to heavy, even though he still only apparently weighed 167 pounds. This is how it used to work back then. But he was getting beat against Corbett, who was one of the first real movers of boxing, in the Queensberry rules at least. Great with his footwork, real fancy down in there. He bloodied Fitzsimmons, he floored him in the 6th round. He was well on top. But in the 13th round, Fitzsimmons switches his stance to southpaw and then throws in a left hook right on the solar plexus. Just above, right there, on the stomach where it's the hardest to get any real tense there, and drops Corbett with one shot. Now for a previous middleweight to drop the man at heavyweight is one of the best ever pound for pound victories you will find in all of boxing. Yes, Roy Jones Jr. went up to beat John Ruiz, but even though for the modern age that was still a great achievement, if you contrast it against what Fitzsimmons did, beating the man with one shot as well when he was losing against John Ruiz, who was nowhere near as good as say Lennox Lewis at that era, it really puts into perspective. Our very own Cornishman, Mr. Blacksmith Bob, did an absolute doozy with that punch. And at number 1, for the middleweight championship of the world, the rematch between Sugar Ray Robinson and the champion, Gene Fullmer. I don't like to be a cliched guy and go along with the crowd. It is the punch that a lot of people would say is number 1 knockout of all time. If we're going to have to whittle it down to 1, it is by any standard an amazing shot. They'd previously fought about 4 months before, with Fullmer taking Sugar Ray's title off him. They fight again, it's in the 5th round, it's a bit even, maybe Fullmer was just up. And Robinson, prior to the knockout, he throws, as he did, kind of these looping rights that kind of went round the kidneys, which was a bit naughty, but he used to do that, and he really scything shots. He threw 2. Perfect shot to throw before a left hook is a right to the body. Chopped away twice there, just to keep Fullmer thinking about that side of his body. And then a left hook, which didn't seem to be wound up the most, And it didn't appear on impact to have that much follow through the jaw. It just seemed to hit the jaw and that was it. But this amazing little left hook that he seems to deliver while slightly on the turn and on the back foot, drops for 10 a guy who'd never even been floored up till that point. It was amazing. It had such a good aesthetic to it. It almost, in a way, when you look at it on the replay, probably the wrong word to use, it almost looks like it's delivered in this almost gentle manner. Robinson just goes, boom. It's almost like a big tap. But the effect it had on Fulmer was instantaneous. And he was grovelling on the canvas and couldn't right himself. Robinson later said it was the punch of his career. Some people called it the $1 million shot. You have to agree. It was a thing of beauty.